Hey, everybody, Mark Herman, aka LA Bengals fan on most of the major platforms. And I am joined here with a very special guest, Jake Sirkus, who's done podcasts and stuff for a bunch of different networks. He's freelancing on his own. Like I said, this is by fans for fans. So this is another episode. Jake is a hardcore fan of Jungle Talk. We are doing a franchise tag recap and free agency preview. So that's what we're doing. Jake, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Well, I mean, diehard fan for sure. I probably should have put on a jersey. I guess I'm gonna.
Okay. It's just an off-season show, so you can get away with the shirt.
I think the last time I was wearing a jersey, I got the wristband on, but I think it was the Super Bowl. That was the last time I had a jersey on, so I haven't really talked about it much. It's still kind of disgusting in talking about it in my mouth, but we move. It's a very exciting time. As far for me, I'm a sophomore at the University of Missouri, studying sports journalism, and my niche is NFL draft and I guess NFL analyst type thing. But I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And there's a lot of stuff we can talk about, and it's an interesting time for the Bengals that they have to find a way to kind of break the mold and find their way back to the biggest stage. It's not going to be easy, but it's certainly doable.
Oh yeah, it's funny. Before you get started, the whole narrative now is, oh, Joe Burrow's so great. Look, he even took this lowly team to the postseason. It's just the narrative is against us. People saying, well, if they don't surround him with offensive linemen, he should be out of there in 5 years. And they're still already talking about him leaving, where we're going to have him for another 4 years. He's got 3 years left on a rookie deal. We can franchise him. I mean,
it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot more than 4 years. It very, very, very rarely does a quarterback who is drafted by a team not re-sign with that team. It's very rare, and it's not going to happen in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow is the quarterback for 10 years. Yeah, there's no reason to sweat. And people will say, oh well, what if they don't sign linemen? And they need to. Like they know that they need to. They're going to sign at least 2 offensive linemen because they need 2 new starters. And if they took the field right now, they'd be without a left guard and without a right tackle. So they need to sign guys, and they have the money. And it's not like they're going to sign backups to start. Because look at the way that they filled this defense out. They didn't sign scrubs. They gave smart contracts to players who fit Lou Anarumo's scheme, and they weren't an amazing defense by any stretch, but they played clutch defense at times, and they got off the field, and that's very much due in part due to their free agency moves that they've made the last 2 years, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And now it's time to move the offense. They've been they've drafted offense very heavy over the last 3 years. Their last 5 first-round picks were offense. I think we kind of see a shift this year where they go offense heavy in free agency and then take the best defensive player available to keep making sure that the defense is young and hungry.
Yeah, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to in the past 2 years of free agency, we really only missed on Trey Wayans. I mean, you think about Hilton, you think about everybody we added, even the Mackenzie Alexander for 1 year and all that. We hit on every single free agent except for Wayans. So they did a great job, and I agree with you. I think we add a couple offensive linemen in free agency, and I obviously think we're going to draft 2 or 3. We're going to restock the stable with some new horses. So. No, I'm looking forward to it. So we're going to do things a little different. We'll touch on a little bit of news, and then we're going to do guys we'd like to see get re-signed and stay, and guys we wouldn't be, and we'll just alternate back and forth, and then we'll do the same thing for free agents. So on the news front, I mean, we extended Zach. No surprise there. I mean, you accomplish what no one's been able to do in 33 years. Yeah, you get an extension. Team play hard for him. Players love him. One of the things that I noticed, and I got into the Super Bowl early because we didn't get into a tailgate. I haven't put it up on the Facebook page yet, but I literally watched during stretching. I watched Zach Taylor walk, and you didn't see this on TV because they were pumping you with whatever they were doing pregame. But I literally watched Zach Taylor go and visit each person while he was stretching, handshake, hug, a personal stop at every single player. He worked his way down. All the guys were in the end zone, stretching before, a couple hours before the game. And it was nice to see. Like I said, Zach deserved that extension. And then obviously the other news is we use the franchise tag on Jesse Bates. I was hoping we could get a deal worked out. I still hope we get a deal worked out. You and I were talking a little before we started filming. We need to pay Burrow. We need to rip up his contract in 2 years and give him exactly what the Chiefs did for Mahomes. They didn't go into the option year. They ripped it up after 4 and said, here's, you've already exceeded your contract. Here's your 10 years, 450 million. We have to do the same thing with Burrow after year 4. And so that's going to occur in 2 years. And then we're probably going to have to do the same thing with Chase in year 5. So we need to structure these deals where they're front loaded and Jesse Bates is cheap, get him on a 4-year deal and have him be cheap and a low cap hit on the next 2 years. So we have Burrow money and Chase money. So that's why I'd like to see us work out the long-term deal. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he was definitely going to get franchise tagged. The last couple of weeks were rough in terms of negotiation because they kept playing and they didn't lose. But it seemed to me that they were like, all right, Jesse, let's just finish the season. We'll figure it out. We're going to tag you. And they obviously want to keep Jesse Bates. Like, they're not willingly going to give Jesse Bates away. And I'm not going to sit here and act like a cap expert. I don't know how they're going to shape the extension. I don't know what they're offering right now. But looking at the highest paid safeties, I think a measuring stick is whatever Marcus Williams is going to get on the open market next week.
Right.
Seems like the Jets are probably the favorites to land him right now. If Marcus Williams gets north of $15.5 million per year, that's probably around what the Bengals should be targeting to give Jesse Bates. Look, but again, they might be lowballing him right now, 11, 12, and obviously even coming off of a slight down year, but he did have the really, really, really good postseason.
Yeah.
That's not what he's worth. He's worth more. And they know that because they have the ability to tag him, and the goal is to not let him see the open market, to not let other teams try to overpay him, because the Bengals don't want to overpay anybody, even their best players. And Jesse Bates, pound for pound, is probably the best player on the team, I would say. Maybe Burrow, but Jesse Bates is probably the pound for pound best player on the team. He's, I think, the only one on the team that's unarguable top 5 at his position in the league. Like, I think Chase is top 5, but some people might not think that. But if you have Jesse Bates outside of your top 5 safeties, I don't really know what to tell you. So he's gonna get paid like it. The Bengals know that. It's just a matter of time, and I think it probably does get done because both sides don't want to be playing on the franchise tag in 2022. It's just not best for business.
Yeah, well, and we're guaranteeing him what was it, 12 or 13 million he's going to get this year.
Yeah.
So that's a for
like
sure.
12.7.
Yeah. So we can go ahead and say, okay, you know what? Let's guarantee the first 2 years. Let's offer him a 3 or $40 million deal and guarantee 25 and give him a big signing bonus. Take most of it, or 40, 3 years, 45, and give him a lot of it in the signing bonus this year. So we can, expense it out this year. So in year 3, Bates isn't a big cap hit when we have to take a big cap hit for Joe's contract. That's why I said we have to be thinking about this going into free agency. We have to be doing the same thing, kind of like what we did with Trey. So, last year.
Yeah, Trey Hendrickson having the big year 1 cap hit was surprising when they first structured it, because we didn't exactly know what player they were signing. Was it the player that had 12 sacks behind Cameron Jordan and Marcus Davenport, or is it the player that took 3 years to really break out? Truth is, it was the player that actually ended up with 12.5 sacks, including 1.5 in the Super Bowl, and played like a monster down the stretch the entire season. So we got the best of both worlds there with Trey Hendrickson. And, I would like to see them restructure his contract. I don't think they're going to end up cutting him. So if they restructure him, it's not a big deal. They're not going to have to cut him. But they don't really restructure contracts. But yeah, you're right. I don't know if they're going to give Bates that, because they really don't give signing bonuses and guaranteed money to anybody, let alone their best players. That's not named AJ Green, which, I think the most guaranteed money they gave to a contract was either Dalton or Green, because Dalton had a 70-80 million contract for multiple years. I don't remember what they gave AJ when he signed his second contract, but both of them are very similar, and we haven't seen him sign that type of contract in-house since. So this Bates thing is definitely a measuring stick and something they haven't done in 6,
Yeah.
7, 8 years.
Well, and it's going to be looked at in the locker room. There are other players looking. T. Higgins and these guys are looking to see if Bates gets taken care of. I mean, it's going to resonate in the locker room. So I think at least doing, like I said, doing like a 3-year deal, I get it. Doing something and structuring it. So we're going to have to see. So both of us are on the same page. We want to work out something long term with Jesse to where it sets up the cap more friendly for us, in a few years. So, all right, let's jump into guys you want to see get re-signed. So I just have a few. I can go first with one, and then you can pick up one. I want to see CJ Uzomah's a locker room leader. So I want to see. I know there's talk about Gronk and let's do this, let's do that. I think we got to reward CJ. I want to keep him on the team. That's just my feeling. Don't overpay for him, and I'm not talking about overpaying for anybody. But CJ was somebody I thought it would be nice to see him get re-signed. So,
yeah, it would definitely be nice to see CJ get re-signed. But there's a couple hurdles I guess they have to go through, a couple problems really that are both interior inside the organization and outside what's going on with the NFL right now. And look, it was good for them that Dalton Schultz and Mike Gesicki got tagged, because if those guys hit the open market, that someone was going to give them over $15 million a year, right. probably north of that. And the problem with CJ is that he was the fifth pass catching option
right.
on the team. So do you really want to pay that much money for a guy who's not going to catch that many passes? Look, we all understand he's a locker room guy. We all love him, but it's going to come down to, all right, CJ, how much money do we have to give you so you can stay? Because it's not going to beat whatever Detroit's going to give you or whatever Chicago's going to give you. Because there's going to be multiple teams, CJ, that are going to pay more money for your services than we will, and we all know that. But he was a fifth option, and the tight end market is kind of set to explode. Like Njoku, Hooper got a crazy contract a couple years ago, and then Schultz and Gesicki got the tag. So there's not that much there at tight end if they do part ways with CJ, which is, I think they're going to find something there, and they're going to keep him. But I look at a guy like Mo Alley Cox, who can come over on a 1-year deal. They're not going to sign Gronk. That's Gronk is such a non-Zach Taylor guy. They're long gone. The days of guys like Gronk and Perfect and Pac-Man Jones and those guys. It's a completely different era. I didn't buy that at all. Just because Gronk wants to play with Joe Burrow doesn't mean he, one, wants to play in Cincinnati, or two, Cincinnati wants him. Because again, their priority is going to be CJ and figuring something out there. But Mo Alley Cox is a guy who can stretch the field vertically, who doesn't need to be on the field as much as a number one tight end, because again, they did spend a second-round pick on Drew Sample, who can block. So Mo Alley Cox doesn't need to block because Sample has proved he can block. And when they do run 2 tight end sets, Mo Alley Cox is going to be a threat vertically, and that's probably a bigger vertical threat than CJ even. So he's going to be cheap, but again, you can't really find CJ's leadership anywhere else in the open market for tight ends. No, so I do agree with you there about definitely wanting to keep him. It's just a matter of if he wants to take more money somewhere else, it would be a clean divorce. Go get paid. You had a couple great years here. Just came a little short in the Super Bowl. I was really glad he got to play.
Me too.
But, it's. I think they're going to get it done. My guess would be 7.5, 8 million. I don't know if a team offers him 10, 11. That is a lot for a guy who has caught.
I don't think he's worth 10 or 11. I just don't.
He's definitely not worth 10 or 11. And look, he only played 1.5 games last year, and he got hurt again at the end of this year, and he only caught 40 or 50 passes, if that. Right. So he. I don't get signing a tight end who, 1, can't block, 2, hasn't caught many passes, 3, isn't a volume guy to begin with, for over $10 million. So if a team does give that to CJ, congrats to CJ. Good for you. But the Bengals are not going to be that team to give him that contract.
No, I agree. All right, who's your guy? Who's your first one that you would like to get re-signed?
My number 1 is BJ Hill. I think when you look at the defensive line, and if they were to play a game tomorrow, I think the most clutch player outside of Trey Hendrickson in the front seven would be BJ Hill, and he's not on the roster right now because he's a free agent.
Right.
And when you look at Larry Ogunjobi, there was a report today that he might be getting one team could offer him $10 million a year. No thanks. BJ Hill will probably need 6 or 7. Right. They can sign him for 2 or 3 years. Larry's probably going to get a 3-year deal. He has the name recognition. He has the sacks, but BJ Hill has the pressures. He has the pressure rate. I think he's better in the run game. It's close, and he was better in 2021 for the Cincinnati Bengals than Larry Ogunjobi was. He did not get injured, and that trade probably is the best trade the Bengals have made in 10 years?
Oh, you know what?
At least because they never do it.
At least the 2000s, we recouped a major draft bust in Price and turned it into Hill, who contributed a ton. I mean, he had a big interception in the postseason. You could check my Twitter feed. So he mentioned like he didn't know what the future held in store on Twitter. So I sent him back saying, hey, keep us in mind. We'd love to keep you. Wouldn't it be great to be part of something special rather than going for the money and winding up in a similar situation to the Giants? And the Giant fans went ballistic on me. So you can check my Twitter feed talking about how much a better team they were and all that. And I wasn't attacking their past. I was saying right now they're a dysfunctional team. They're looking at signing Trubisky.
The Giants are probably the most dysfunctional team in the league. Right.
But the fans went ballistic. It's actually kind of comical. And you could see there were Giant fans that came to my defense saying he didn't attack us as a team. He just said that they're in a better situation than us right now. But it was just kind of funny. But I did reach out to BJ on Twitter and try to say, hey, you know what? You could be part of something special here. There are a lot of people who played for Tampa and Tom Brady because they wanted to be part of something special. And Tom Brady himself always took less money so that he could have players around him. So there's a lesson there.
I think there's a best of both worlds. I think there's a world where the Bengals do give BJ Hill his market value. I really do. I think that they're going to take a look at it and try to find how can we re-sign both these guys? Because do we really want to dip our nose back in the 3 technique pool? Because it's really hard to find a good one. And they've kind of figured that out because they've been trying to draft one. They almost drafted Milton Williams last year. They should have taken a 3 technique in the 2020 draft, but instead they took a guy named T. Higgins and Logan Wilson. And I don't think anyone of us will complain that they took those guys over a defensive lineman, but it's a position that they've needed to address since Zach got there. And they got 2 really good ones last offseason. So why would you not try to just re-keep them? Because a thing that Bengals fans kind of don't really understand, and throughout the season, when free agency got closer, and during the season, and these guys who we knew were going to become free agents kept on playing, we started to have to realize that the holes on this team are fillable by keeping the guys you have now. Right. There's no dead weight on the current roster. Anyone who played in the Super Bowl that doesn't play offensive line isn't considered dead weight. They're valuable to this team. They're valuable to the wins that they got. And part of that is the defensive line. The defensive line was a weakness last year for sure. And part of that is losing Joseph Ossai. But BJ Hill and Larry Ogunjobi are 2 good players. And if they re-sign them, at least one of them, I still think that they're going to draft a 3 technique. Again, they kind of have to. They have to get younger at that position. But my main point is, why would you want to dip your feet back in that pool and try to find someone else? Because they signed Larry to a 1-year deal. It worked out. Unfortunately, he got hurt in the postseason and didn't play those last three playoff games. But it was a good signing for the money checked out. I think it was like $6.5 million, $5 million. BJ was making chump change this season, so he's due for a nice payday for his production, especially becoming a starter in the postseason. That bumped his market value crazy, and teams saw him on the big stage. So kind of screwed the Bengals out of some cheapness for BJ Hill. The fact that he was slotted in as a starter when Larry got hurt and played those starter snaps in those last playoff games. But again, you have the guys, you have the connection. They like playing there. We know Larry and BJ like being in Cincinnati, they've been on the record of saying that. So I think that they're going to just try to re-sign their own guys because, again, that's how you fill your holes when you're good.
Right.
Good teams don't just keep signing new good players. They keep the guys who are on their team and then add to that externally on positions of need. And right now, defensive line, I don't think was a huge position of need in interior. But if they don't keep those guys, it sure as hell is.
Oh, yeah. And I think we can get Hill at the right price. I really do. Ogunjobi's going to have to take your right. Just the name recognition alone, he's going to get overpaid. So, but we'll see. We'll see if he wants to stay. I have two other names because I don't want to get into the free agency. So I'm going to throw them both out there for the right price on both of these. Okay. I would like to see us keep Riley Reef. We missed him. If we had had him in the Super Bowl, we would have won the Super Bowl. I mean, clearly his loss, he hit a lot of problems. And then we saw the Adeniji and Carmen and all that. Those problems were magnified once Reef was out. So I'd like to see us at the right price get Reef. If we have to spend top dollar money, let's go get one of these other guys that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And the other one I'm going to throw out there, just because he played solid down the year. And I was the biggest critic of his. You can go back and watch the episodes. And I talked about good apple, bad apple. But for the right price, Eli Apple played good situationally. And I know he got burned on the play at Kansas City that set up the 1st and goal, late in the second quarter, but he also made the tackle to keep the guy out of the end zone. So, Tyreek Hill out of the end zone. So they didn't score points. So he had his moments at the right price. Just for depth, I wouldn't mind seeing Apple stick around, but those both have to be at the right price. We don't overpay for either one of those guys.
Yeah. I'll say this about Apple. And some people might not like this, especially people who don't follow the Bengals. I have nothing against Eli Apple. What he did this year, signing in late August, early September, off the street,
yes,
and came in and played corner 2 and played 20 games. Eli Apple played the second most snaps, and counting postseason games, of course. He played the second most snaps out of anybody in the entire league, including quarterbacks. Sorry, on defense, on defense. He played more snaps than anybody in the league except for Jalen Ramsey in 2021. And he was signed off the street. And he was pretty productive. He was in a slightly above average corner, definitely an above average corner too. We see what teams like Arizona, who was a playoff team, throw out there in their secondary. Robert Alford was their corner too. He hasn't played since 2019. Teams like Atlanta, who they have in their secondary. Corners in Dallas get burned all the time. Eli Apple.
Oh, and look, how many PIs do we see at Thanksgiving?
Should they re-sign him to be their corner 2? No, because they need to draft one. I think that's where they probably end up going at 31. To be quite honest, is corner. But Apple was not phenomenal. But Apple, I have nothing bad to say about Eli Apple. And I get he's a meme and he talks shit on Twitter, but he was really good when they needed him to be good. And he got signed off the street and played more snaps on defense than anybody in the league this year outside of Jalen Ramsey. So he is going to get paid by someone. Like this time last year, if we said, Eli Apple was going to get $7 million from someone, we were like, holy crap, what the hell? But no, that's probably what he's going to get. I doubt the Bengals bring him back because if they do, it's going to be their corner 4. And he probably doesn't want that because he just had his career year after being picked in the first round in 2015. But look, he's an Ohio State kid, so you never know. I think he enjoyed playing in Cincinnati, and when they signed him, we were like, oh, well, we're doing this again with Trey Rain.
I just thought he was a depth dad. When we signed him, I said, he's a good depth dad. I don't have any problem with it. I'm just like, I think if you go back to the show, I think I went, meh. I didn't hate it.
Eli,
I didn't love it. I was just, it's just a depth dad.
The Eli Apple ad was exactly the same as the Ricardo Allen ad, and Ricardo Allen did not play as many snaps as Eli Apple. Ricardo Allen was a depth signing, and Eli Apple was slotted in at corner 2 for 20 games and held his weight and more. So I have nothing bad to say about Eli Apple. I hope he starts next year for a team and plays well and gets what he deserves, because if there was no Eli Apple, there is no Chiefs win. You can say that about a lot of guys on the team. If there's no this guy, there's no division. It really was a team effort. But Eli Apple was as big of a part of that as anyone.
Yeah, and early on, he would get like the Chicago game, which I think was week 2 or week 3. He committed the pass interference that led to the touchdown, which was the 7-0 lead at half, and that was one of the reasons we lost the game. There were 4 plays I pointed to, and he wasn't making football plays. He would commit the penalty to stop the catch, and later on he started making football plays. It was like a switch flipped in his brain, and it was almost right after the bye week, because I watched him play really good in Vegas. I almost said Oakland. In Vegas.
And, I say Oakland all the time.
And I slip on San Diego all the time too, but I actually went to the Raider game, Bengal Raiders in Vegas, and I got to see him live, and he played great, and and he made clutch plays down the stretch. So, but like I said, for the right price, we have offensive linemen. We've got to make a splash, and that's our next topic. So, what was your feeling on Reef? For the right price, yes, or you want to see him just, thanks for the 1 year divide?
Right tackle and right guard are the true positions of need, because they're going to get a left guard. If it's re-signing Spain, it's re-signing Spain. If it's someone else, I don't think they're going to downgrade at left guard. So we really need to set our focus on right guard and right tackle, and we do have the draft. There's no true right tackle on the free agent market, which inclines me to believe, A, that they think Jackson Carman can play right tackle, and B, they're going to draft someone maybe to compete with Carman, and that's their future plan at right tackle. And if not, Carman can play right guard. Or they could re-sign Reef, because, yeah, you're right. He was a serviceable right tackle. And at the end of the day, the Bengals really need serviceable linemen, and they're probably fine because of the athletes they have on the outside. Now, would we like to see, 4 out of 5 offensive linemen be consensusly above average? Absolutely. Was Reef consensusly above average last year? Not really, but he was good. He gave up a crap ton of sacks. He had some penalties. But no, the biggest point is that when he got hurt, they didn't have the bodies behind him.
Right.
And that's a risk when you sign a 34-year-old to a 1-year deal. There's not much, long-term risk, but if he goes down with the ankle injury and you're in a playoff run, you have to face Aaron Donald and Von Miller, you're screwed. And that's the situation the Bengals found themselves in. So I don't know I can't guess what their future plan at right tackle is. It's kind of scary. It could be Jonah Williams. Maybe they do end up signing someone like
them moving him over. I've seen reports of we signed a new center. Now Hopkins can play one of the.
They're going to sign a center. They have to sign a center, and if you want to transition into that, we can for sure do that.
We can transition right now. I mean, my number one guy on my list is Ryan Jensen. I would love to. That's my number one guy. Who do I want? It's Jensen and Scherf. Those are my top 2 on my wish list, right there.
I think Jensen is definitely more realistic than Scherf, because we saw last year with Tooney, and just because they made the Super Bowl, I don't think they're going to change their financial philosophy about not paying interior linemen. Jensen's also a little bit older, a little bit worse than Scherf. I mean, Brandon Scherf is a top 5 player at his position, finally getting to leave Washington after being franchise tagged twice by Dan Snyder. Yeah. Can you believe that? That's terrible. I feel bad for the guy. He's going to get paid a lot of money, and I don't think the Bengals are going to be really in on that. I see them finding more bargain deals in terms of guard, but I think that a huge need is center, and we love Trey. We all love Trey, but the truth is he was a bad guard, was a fine center. Trey Hopkins was never an above average center. Let's just set the record straight.
No,
Trey Hopkins was a fine center. It just was a little skewed because he was the second best offensive lineman on the team last year, and at times this year too, which was a problem. No, Spain. So he was the 3rd best offensive lineman at times on the team this year, but in 2020 he was their 2nd best offensive lineman. And he wasn't really that great. So center is a need. They're going to sign a center. The center market's really good. A guy like Ben Jones, it fits the scheme. A guy like Ryan Jensen fits the scheme. There was reports the last 48 hours that, some people with the Steelers think that it's 95% done. I don't know how much I buy that, but I do think they're going to go after him. I was surprised when I looked at Jensen's profile the other day. I was surprised he only made 1 Pro Bowl, because he was kind of good with the Ravens, and then obviously went to Tampa and was a monster with them. He made his first career Pro Bowl this year. Could have arguably been All Pro. He's a really really good player, and that this would be a anomaly on the Bengals offensive line. And I'm not saying that because I think Jonah Williams is a bad player, but the Bengals don't have anyone who's a monster athlete or just a monster human on the offensive line. Ryan Jensen's a monster human. He's a stick your nose in, mean type of player. He's very, very physical, and that's what you want at the center position. It's what they haven't had since Bodine, and that's not even comparable to what Ryan Jensen can bring. And I'll say this: it's probably what they haven't had on the interior in general since Kevin Zeitler. And
right,
we can sit here and talk for hours about that horrible offseason, letting Zeitler and Whitworth walk in a span of 12 hours to teams that want to combine like 4 games the previous year. Like Whitworth went to the Rams; they were horrible that year, and then Zeitler obviously signed with Cleveland, and they didn't win a single game that year. So that was a mess, but they haven't had that on the interior. Jensen's that guy. I agree with you. He's my top guy. I don't think they're going to go after Armstead. I would love it.
I don't think they will either because
anytime you can sign anytime you can sign a guy who's top 5 in his position, you try to do it. They're not going to. I don't really blame them. That's a really large commitment for a guy who's old and injured a lot. Hasn't played a full season in a couple of years, but he's elite. He's an All-Pro, and there's not many All-Pros that really ever hit the open market in the NFL. So, but Ryan Jensen is the best of both worlds. He's old, but he plays a lot. He doesn't really get injured, and he's a pro. He's a pro's pro.
Yeah, he's my number one get. Who's top on your list besides Jensen and Scherf?
So Scherf isn't really on my list. I just don't think they're going to do it. If we go to left guard, I think because left guard's a lot, there's Connor Williams, who's really young. There's James Daniels, who's really young. They can go that route. I don't think they're going to. I think they want guys who produce now. Now, Connor Williams, they can figure out. He was an All-American at Texas. So, look, if they think that Frank Pollock can fix the penalties, Connor Williams is probably the move because he's also a long-term answer at a position you haven't had a long-term answer in 5 or 6 years.
Right.
But I think what they should do, really, really what they should do, I think, is Laken Tomlinson. He is an athlete and a good enough pass blocker. He's mean in the run game. And I think that's what they need to try to do. Because if you're a professional offensive lineman, you can block. If you're getting paid $10 million, you can pass block, right? Like, they're not going to sign a guy who can't pass block. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about someone fitting in the wide zone scheme. And that's exactly what Laken Tomlinson did it with Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan.
Right.
Again, a pro's pro, guy who's been around the block a lot, and he's ready to get paid. And if the Bengals want to pay a guard $10 million, Laken Tomlinson, there's no excuse for him not to be the left guard for the Bengals next year.
Right. So, I had down a couple guys on our list. Connor Williams, I had the same thing. It's funny. In my notes, I put, if Pollock can fix him. Because he is only 24, but he's got 51 starts under his belt. So that makes him attractive. But yeah, he had some breakdowns where Dak got lit up because he missed blocks, or like you said, on the penalties. So I put down here, if Pollock can fix him. There's another guy who could play multiple positions, and that would be Eric Fisher, who might be affordable in terms of depth because the Indianapolis is going to let him go. And I'm just, for the right price, we're talking about spending our money wisely, bringing in necessary pieces. Obviously, we can draft a couple guys, but we want to bring in guys who can play. I had Laken Tomlinson also down as the guard of somebody that I wanted. And the other one I have is Joe Notaboom, because he was a good pass protector when he filled in for Witt on the Rams. So those were guys that, like I said, we all have to see, it's how much do they want? So we only have so much money to, and we need to front load. If we get somebody like Tomlinson, then we need to, once again, we talked about structuring the contract, front loading, getting these guys for like 4 years, where the last 2 years, they're not going to be big cap hits. So we have the money for Burrow. So, but I like all of those guys. The last one I'll throw out there, Bradley Bozeman. he's 28 and he can play guard or center. But what's nice about him is you get the double-edged sword of hurting a division rival. So if you can pluck somebody off of the Ravens and make them weaker, you help yourself out in double fold. But I'm not saying don't hire the wrong guy just because he's on a division rival. So, but I have him down on my list as well. So, guys,
I think whatever center they end up signing, I'm fine with. Whether it's Bozeman, we haven't talked about Ben Jones. I tweeted about Ben Jones a couple weeks ago. I would love Ben Jones. Again, wide zone scheme to perfection. Rarely gets penalized. He's very, very mean. Again, if you block for Derrick Henry, I want you on my team. You know, and they released Roger Saffold today too. Tennessee did. That's also a interesting look because we wanted the Bengals to sign Zeitler last year, and you know we were like they're gonna please draft linemen, sign linemen, and they didn't. Other than Reef and Carmen. Right. And that really didn't work. It didn't really work out. I hated the Carmen pick. I still do. But that's the hand that they, you know, gave themselves with. But we wanted them to sign Zeitler, and they probably should have. Yeah. But they didn't. And now they're left with needing two guards and a center, and probably a right tackle. So this is like the Bengals are not get unlucky. Every move they've made as a plan, they stress defense, but they're in a position right now where they need two guards and a center. And whatever center they sign, because again, they have to sign one. Don't be worried they're not going to sign one. They need to sign a center. And I think if they get Bozeman, Jones, Jensen, Corbett maybe can play center. Austin Corbett, guy we even talked about a little bit. I think even Evan Brown from Detroit is a guy who I think is probably a little better than Bradley Bozeman. But anyone, I like all the centers. I can't say that about the guards, but I do like most, if not all, of the centers. So if they sign a center, boom, I'm happy.
Yeah. My only problem with Corbett is he's got issues in pass blocking. He's a great run blocker, but we got to keep Joe upright. So, you know, there are several guys that are going to be hitting free agency that are good run blockers. I have Corbett down. I have Brandon Allen from the Rams down. Another center. I have Norwell from Jacksonville at guard, but all three of those people I just mentioned are great run blockers and they have pass protection issues. And one of the things we've got to do, it's one thing to have a hole close up on Mixon. It's another thing to have Joe get lit up. We cannot have him getting hit like he got hit this last year. That can't happen.
Bengals fans kind of got the opposite of spoiled last year with the guard play they had, especially on the right side. Spain was really good. Spain is not a great player, but Spain is a guy, you know, I always say, maybe not in modern day NFL because of the spread, but mostly in the NFL, you can hide poor pass protection from guards. Can't really do that anymore, but maybe. So Spain was fine, but again, Spain, like we love Quentin Spain, but Quentin Spain was probably the 16th best left guard in the league.
Right. We loved him because of what else we had on our roster. That's
Correct.
How we loved him.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. We were spoiled with how truly generationally bad for a team that won their division, the right side of their offensive line in the playoffs, how generationally poor the production they got. I mean, we're talking PFF grades lower than 25 in multiple playoff games by multiple offensive linemen. That is horrendous. Like, you cannot win games like that consistently. And two right guards, Carmen and Adeniji. They drafted Jackson Carmen because they didn't think Hakeem Adeniji can play right guard. Adeniji won the job because Carmen was so bad, and then Adeniji was so bad they had to go Jackson Carmen, who was equally, if not worse, bad. It was a mess. Again, this is the hand that this is the situation that they have single-handedly put themselves in, where they need to sign 3 starters on the offensive line, or else they can't field a competitive team next year. And if they don't field a team that's as competitive as they were this year, they'll lose all the momentum. And you know, they have to avoid wasting next year, because a lot of teams have Super Bowl hangovers. And I think the Bengals, this isn't really a biased take, I think the Bengals are in a truly different spot where they can avoid the hangover, because they only have one true need, and that need is offensive line, because it affected them so much last year.
Right. And look at where we got with the offensive line we had. We just had, like you said, average, competent people. That doesn't have to be top 5, but if we just can put top 15, top 20 guys at some of these positions, we can make some hay. So The last thing I want to talk about, is there any other free agents that you wanted that we haven't touched on?
I don't think they do much on defense and free agency. They look they got Bates. Maybe they can sign a veteran linebacker because I think that group was really really thin towards the end of the year. Bailey coming back is going to help them, and then what's the guy's name? The fourth string, I forget his name. The guy from Michigan State, Bachi, Judd,
Right.
Joe Bacci. He was good. So, but the position's a little thin. I could see them signing a linebacker, but again, there were like 17 linebackers that ran sub 4.6s in the combine. So just throw a dart at the screen and take whoever's up there in the fourth round. Take a fast linebacker. That's what they did with Hakeem Davis-Gaither, and I think he's good. I forgot about him too. Coming off the foot injury, but we're not going to really expect him to play a full season ever because he's had a long history of injuries dating back to high school.
Right.
So linebacker, I think, is the only true thing they do need, except for 3-tech. But we'll see what they do with BJ and Larry. I think that figuring out the things with BJ and Larry, I think that they're gonna do that before they sign anyone else. So that'll be interesting. But tight end maybe, and then again, like they should draft a fast receiver. Like they really don't have. It's not like they have the ability to sign 7 players, and they're gonna sign 3 or 4 players who are going to start, and 2 or 3 of them are going to be offensive linemen.
Right. I agree. I want to touch on 2 things. Is we can actually make a trade right now and pick up the 2 tackles that I'm thinking about are obviously Collins on Dallas and Tunsil on Houston. Both teams want out of it. Both teams are in cap situations where they need to, especially Dallas. I don't know if I've been listening to Pat Kerwin on Moving the Chains or whichever one he does, whichever his radio show is. And he's talking about, he said, the top 9 teams with cap space were all AFC teams. Now that's changed in the last week. But the only reason it's changed is because of the Russell Wilson trade. Seattle jumped in at number 3 now. So now of the top 9 teams, one of them is NFC. But you've got some teams in the NFC that are literally the Saints. You go through them. They're doing anything. We could get Collins off of Dallas. He's like a $10 million cap hit this year. We could work something out. So we can pick somebody up if we want to do a trade also and not have to enter the free agent market for at least one player. Those 2 are out there. So I don't know if that's going to be in the works. You're going to have, basically when a Dallas is reaching out to other teams to see who will take La'el Collins, they're saying, we need to move this off our cap sheet. So, maybe wait and he gets cut, but then you're bidding with him in the open market. I think you can get him on a much lower cap hit via trade. So I don't know if they could work something out. That's one avenue.
So Dallas, I kind of studied their cap situation the other day. Actually, I didn't think that they would put Collins on the market. He's a top 5-7 right tackle, and he's a true right tackle. Right. He didn't play in 2020, but was elite in 2019 and was elite in 2021. It's still only 28. I lean him over Tunsil. I just don't know what Houston and Dallas will ask for them. And if you ask me right now, would I trade number 31 for Tunsil or Collins? And I probably would say yes, but not right now. That's a move that would happen closer to the draft.
Right.
Because I do think that if there are certain players there at 31, that pick becomes untouchable because there are true needs that the Bengals have, and that they're not in a situation where they can just trade draft picks like the Rams to get superstars, because they do have needs to fill, and there are players that would fill that needs that might be available at 31. But that's not saying anything bad about Collins or Tunsil. I do lean Collins a little bit, but again, I don't know what Dallas is going to ask. Dallas will not cut Collins for one. He's too good, and right. He doesn't make. And they restructured Dak and who else did they restructure?
There was one other player this week they restructured.
It was Dak and I think Zach Martin. They restructured Zach Martin,
but they're still a cap situation. So
right, they're close though. They're really close though. So if they don't get what they want for him, they can keep him and then figure out something else to do, like releasing Amari Cooper, who might get released. They're trying to trade him too. So if they trade Amari Cooper, Collins probably goes back to being untouchable. Like they're not just going to trade their all-pro
I think
right
they're going to
tackle.
release. They're going to release Cooper because they need to free up the money. But here's the thing: Cooper is not tradable because of that contract. Where Collins
That's what they're trying to figure out right now.
Yeah.
Like I think what I'm trying to say is I think they will release Amari Cooper before they trade Lyle Collins. So I think Tunsil is more attainable,
right?
If that makes sense, because it's the Texans, and we don't really know what the Texans are going to do. Texans have like the 60% of their snaps from last year who are free agents.
Right.
Like they're a mess.
With the Watson situation, the Texans don't know what they're going to do.
So look, we have two great tackles who are available, but one of them probably is going to become unavailable in the next couple of days, Collins. And Tunsil, you're dealing with fire because you don't really want to deal with Houston right now because no one knows what they're thinking. So and when you add on the fact that it would be the biggest trade in Bengals history by far, I don't know what would be second. So it's playing with fire a little bit, but it is fun to think about because the fantasy of adding good players to this offensive line, just adding good players to this offense would make it even more fun. But so that's fun to do, but I doubt they make that move. And every year Tobin has his presser at the combine and the Senior Bowl, and he says, we're going to look in the trade market. We're going to look, outside free agents. And that hasn't been true up until 2 years ago when they started to sign guys when they started to become good. So this is still new. This is only the third year where we're like, oh, they're going to sign guys. Because in 2019, we're like, they're not going to sign anybody.
And you know what? We kind of had a change in the guard because Mike Brown is kind of he was there holding up the trophy, but he hasn't been as active in the management of the team. We see more Katie Blackburn and Troy. We see the granddaughter handling social media. I mean, there's been some changes going on, and this is part of why I think we have. I know that there's a Super Bowl hangover, but I think we have a really good shot at returning to the Super Bowl, or at least getting deep into the playoffs again, based on if we add the pieces we need, because we're a completely different situation than some of the teams that we're up and coming. Joe's hungrier now. I mean, we get Joe Burrow next year with a chip on his shoulder, a bigger chip than he went in this year with,
and
because
probably
he got there and didn't get it. So it's, like I said, I like that. When you have a guy like Burrow with this competitive nature. So I do think we have a chance if we do continue to do what we've been doing, and we've got to change the way we do contracts. We've got to guarantee a couple of years. We have to. That's got to be a change.
I don't think they're going to. I really don't, because we said this last year. Because everybody, and I mean everybody, because of what the cap is going to become in 2 years, everybody was backloading the contracts, and the Bengals didn't. They front loaded their contracts, and we were all upset. Like every single team who signed a player outside of their organization backloaded that contract, and the Bengals did not. The Cheeto was a little better, but their best free agent they signed, Trey Hendrickson, his biggest cap hit was in year one. Now it didn't affect them because they didn't miss out on signing anybody. Like they signed, I think, everybody they wanted to. God, they didn't want to come, thank God, and then they didn't sign Tooney because they were never going to give him that money. So they didn't miss out. Like signing Trey Hendrickson to that front-loaded deal didn't affect them. It only gives them more cap space this year and next year. So, but it was interesting because everybody else was doing the opposite, and the Bengals were doing their own thing last year. And I think it's going to be similar this year. It's just how it's going to go.
Okay. The last thing I want to mention, and it's just in passing, is I want to remind everybody that we are going to have a lot of cap casualties that are going to hit the market in the next few weeks, maybe in the next month. And a lot of it's going to come from these NFC teams. They just need to create the Saints. These teams need to create cap space. Some of them couldn't even sign their draft class right now. So there's going to be a lot of names, a lot of quality players that are going to hit. And the Bengals tend to like to sit back and get those bargains. So we're going to see. I don't want Bengal Nation to freak out when we don't make a big splash the first day of free agency or the first week of free agency.
First hour.
First
hour.
Yeah.
On Monday afternoon.
Well, Monday with the legal tampering starting. So we're going to see. But it'll be, like I said, if they ended up landing a Ryan Jensen, I really think that makes a statement. That's going to be, that they're committed. I think they need to do that. I think they need to take care of Bates for the locker room. And I think they need to have a big signing to where they show Burrow, hey, listen, we're going to put guys around you. So we'll see what happens. And like I said, this is all about, we have to get ready for the Burrow and Chase 2 and 3 years from now. So we've got to prepare for that. So Jake, it was a real pleasure having you on the show. I hope you enjoyed coming on. We're definitely
lots of fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you back. Remind everybody where they can find you on Twitter and stuff.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at Jake Sirkus. That's Sirkus. If you like, I don't know what I post nowadays. Interesting cap stuff. Some analysis. And then in the summer, if you want to listen to me call college or collegiate summer league baseball in Nebraska, you can do that. I will be in Nebraska this summer announcing for a collegiate league team. So that will be fun. So you can follow me along there, but at Twitter at Jake Sirkus.
Okay. When I'll tweet out this episode, I'm going to tag him in the tweet. So you can find Jake, follow Jake. Once again, we'll be back with probably a free agency, as free agency is going. So in a week or two, we'll throw up another episode. I know we're going to have Jake back, on a draft episode or something. So I'm definitely looking forward to having you back. And with that, I'm going to say, hoo day, everybody. Take care.